This story is called How Violence is Ended. It's based on an old Buddhist tale, and it is retold by Shepard. Once upon a time, there were two kings who quarreled. King Brahmadatta, whose kingdom was large and wealthy and whose troops were many, and King Digiti, whose kingdom was small and poor and whose troops were few. Well, King Brahmadatta told his generals, "We will march against Digiti and seize his kingdom. There is nothing that he can do to stop us." Well, upon hearing from his soldiers that Brahmadatta's army was coming, King Digiti told his wife, Queen Deva, "There is nothing we can do to prevent Brahmadatta from seizing our lands. For the sake of our people, we must do everything we can to prevent a battle. Let us flee in the night." So, in the cover of darkness, Digiti, his wife, Queen Deva, and their son, Prince Dagavu, fled the city. They went to the only place they could think they would never be found, Brahmadatta's own kingdom in the city of Benares. They found the poorest district, and Digiti disguised himself as a wandering holy man and spent his days begging on the streets for coins and food enough to feed his family. As Dagavu grew into manhood, the king and queen knew that they could not keep him here, for if Brahmadatta ever found out that they were here, he would surely kill them all. So the king and queen decided to send the prince away to the queen's family in the west, where he could get a good education, learn arts and sciences, and other things befitting his station. Well, while he was away, a barber who used to work at the court of Digiti, who now worked at the court of Brahmadatta, recognized the old king. He could tell there was something familiar about the wandering holy man. He followed him back to his home and immediately recognized Queen Deva. Well, he ran as fast as he could to King Brahmadatta, thinking there would be a reward for discovering where King Digiti had been hiding. He told King Brahmadatta that the entire time Digiti had been right here under his nose in his very kingdom. Well, Brahmadatta was not a happy man and sent his soldiers to the dwelling to retrieve Digiti and Deva. When they were brought before him, Brahmadatta said, "Tell me, where is your son?" Digiti smiled and said, "He is beyond your reach. You will never get to him." Well, frustrated, King Brahmadatta had his soldiers bind the two together, load them in a cart, and parade them through the city. And at the south gate, they would be executed. They would be beheaded, and their bodies would be left for the birds and the beasts. Well, at this point, Prince Dagavu returned. He came back to Benares to visit his parents, to see how they had fared while he was away. Upon entering the city, he saw a beautiful procession of soldiers on foot and on horseback, and the soldiers on horseback were dragging a cart, and on the cart were his mother and his father, bound together. Oh, he knew they had been found out. He knew that his parents were on their way to an execution, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Well, Digiti, seeing Dagavu, wanting to impart some last words of wisdom but not give his son away, said as if to no one at all, "Be not short-sighted. Be not long-sighted. Violence is not ended by violence. Violence is ended by non-violence." And with those parting words, the cart was led out of the city gates, and the two were beheaded and left on the ground, guarded by a dozen soldiers. Dagavu was devastated. He knew that he must avenge his family, but he also knew that he must provide them with the funeral rites that they deserved. So he went to the market and he bought some good, strong wine and took it to those soldiers guarding the bodies. They gladly accepted the gift, and they drank it until they were drunk and passed out on the ground. And while they were incapacitated, Degavu built a funeral pyre, put his hands together, and walked 3 times around the funeral pyre. Well, across the kingdom, King Brahmadatta was up on his rooftop terrace. He was looking across the city, and he was contemplating those last words of Degidi, trying to make sense of them, when he saw the fire, and he saw the figure circling the fire, and terror gripped his heart. He knew this must be the prince come back to avenge the death of his parents. Well, the prince fled the city and hid in the woods just outside of the kingdom. And there he waited. He waited for a few weeks until the soldiers stopped looking for him and until he was over grieving his parents. And then he returned to the city, and he approached the royal elephant stables and got a job as an apprentice. And so it was that one morning outside of the stables he sat on a stump and sang to bring in the dawn. Well, the song carried to the palace, and the king heard this joyous music, and it gladdened his heart, for he had been very troubled at the thought of the prince coming to avenge his family. And so he sent a soldier down to retrieve this boy with this beautiful voice. And when Degavu entered the palace and saw Brahmadatta, his enemy, Brahmadatta didn't recognize him at all and requested that he sing a song. So he sang a song, and the king requested that he stay and become an attendant. "As you wish, my lord," Degavu said. And so it was that Degavu became an attendant of King Brahmadatta and was there with him day in, day out, singing to him. And over time, his agreeable nature led him to get more and more responsibility from the king, until one day, when the king wished to go hunting, he asked that Degavu drive his chariot. "As you wish, my lord," said Degavu. Degavu followed the hunt for a while, but as the hunting party turned one way to follow their quarry, Degavu turned the other. "Don't worry, my lord, I know a shortcut." And he continued farther and farther away from the others, further out of sight and out of sound range, until finally the king said, "We must stop. I am getting tired and I need to rest." Degavu got down out of the chariot, and he sat on the floor, and he crossed his legs, and he said, "Come, rest with me, my lord." And so the king got down out of the chariot and came over and laid down and cradled his head in Degavu's lap. And soon he was fast asleep. Degavu felt that this was his chance, this was his opportunity to exact his revenge. He slowly drew a knife from his boot and held it above the king's neck. But then the words of his father came back to him, and he remembered, "Be not short-sighted, be not long-sighted. Violence is not ended by violence. Violence is ended by non-violence." And his hand trembled, but he put the knife away. Well, the king suddenly sat bolt upright. And Degavu questioned, "What's wrong, my lord?" King Brahmadatta said, "I have just had a terrible dream. It's one that often plagues me. The prince has come back to exact his revenge. He comes at me with a sword. It's terrifying." Well, Degavu grabbed his hair, pulled his head back down, retrieved his knife, and held it to Brahmadatta's throat and said, "I am Degavu, and I have come to avenge my parents." Well, Brahmadatta said, "No, please, spare my life." Dagavu said, "It is not your life that should be spared, but mine. For you would gladly kill me. You have killed my mother, you have killed my father, and you look to kill me." Well, Brahmadatta said, "I swear, if you spare my life, I will spare yours." Well, Dagavu hesitated for a moment, but slowly released the king and put the knife away and reached for his hand. Well, the two men shook and agreed never to harm one another. And while they were standing there, the king said, "Can I ask you what your father meant? What those words meant that he said to you? Be not short-sighted." Dagavu said, "That means, don't be quick to spurn a friendship. Be not long-sighted? Well, that means don't let your hate last too long. Violence is not ended by violence, but violence is ended by non-violence. Well, my father meant this. You, my lord, killed my father, my mother, and took my kingdom. If I were to kill you, your allies would kill me, and then my allies would kill your allies, and it would continue, and the violence would never end. But by not killing each other, by sparing you and you sparing me, we have ended the violence." Well, King Brahmadatta was impressed by the wisdom of this boy, and so he returned the kingdom to its rightful place, and Prince Dagavu became King Dagavu, and they ruled together side by side in friendship for many years.